You're the enemy's son? Alien princess saved human warrior and sparked a war of revenge. The escape pod drifted silently near the edge of the neutral zone, its lights flickering weakly like a dying star. Princess Aelira stood on the bridge of her diplomatic ship, staring at the scan display. The object was small, damaged, and clearly not Virelian. It was human. Her advisors spoke at once, their voices tense and sharp. It's a trap. Humans do not drift helplessly. Leave it. Protocol forbids contact. Aelira raised one slender hand and the bridge fell silent. She had been trained since childhood to recognize threats, but something about the pod felt wrong. There were no weapons signatures, no active signals. Only a faint life sign that blinked slowly like a tired heartbeat. "Bring it aboard," she said. The officers stared at her in disbelief. "Your Highness," one of them said carefully, "humans are classified as hostile. Any contact is my responsibility," Aelira finished calmly. "If this being dies while we watch, then neutrality means nothing." Reluctantly, the crew obeyed. The pod was placed in a sealed medical chamber. When the outer hatch opened, a human male lay inside, strapped into a cracked seat. His uniform was burned and torn, not by weapons fire, but by extreme heat and system failure. His face was pale, marked by exhaustion rather than rage. One arm hung loosely at his side, and his breathing was shallow but steady. "He is alive," the medical officer confirmed, sounding surprised. "Barely." Aelira watched as they moved him gently onto a medical platform. The human did not resist. He did not wake. He simply breathed, unaware that his life now rested in the hands of the people his kind had once been taught to fear. For hours, Aelira remained nearby. She told herself it was duty, but deep inside she knew it was curiosity. Humans were not supposed to look like this. They were meant to be loud, aggressive, cruel. Stories said they smiled while destroying worlds. Yet this one looked quiet, still, almost fragile. When he finally opened his eyes, it was slowly, as if waking hurt more than sleeping. He blinked, focusing on the strange ceiling above him. His eyes widened slightly, but he did not move. "Easy," Aelira said softly, stepping into his view. "You are safe." The human swallowed. His voice was rough when he spoke. "Then I'm dead." Aelira frowned. "You are alive." He closed his eyes again, releasing a tired breath. "That's unfortunate." That made her pause. "Why would you say that?" she asked. He opened his eyes again and looked at her properly now. His gaze was alert but calm. There was no hatred in it, no fear either. "Because if I'm alive," he said, "then I cause someone trouble." Despite herself, Aelira felt something unfamiliar tug at her chest. "You were rescued," she said, "by us." His brow furrowed. "You're Virelian." "Yes." He stared at her for a long moment, then slowly tried to sit up. The medical platform gently stopped him. "I don't want to cause an incident," he said. "If your people need to hand me over, I won't resist." The room felt colder. "You would surrender yourself?" Aelira asked. He nodded. "It's easier that way." No human in any story had ever said such a thing. Over the next cycle, Aelira learned more about him than she ever expected. His name was Elias, a commander, though he did not act like one. He thanked every crew member who entered the room. He apologized whenever the medical equipment caused delays. He never demanded anything. When she asked him why he had been alone in the neutral zone, he answered honestly. "My ship was evacuating civilians," he said. "A system failure forced us to scatter escape pods. I stayed behind to make sure everyone launched." "And your crew?" Aelira asked. "They made it out," he said quietly. "That was the point." The words stayed with her long after she left the medical chamber, but peace never lasted long around humans. A warning alert sounded across the ship. Long-range sensors detected Virelian command signals, official, urgent, and dangerous. They had detected the human. Aelira was summoned to the Secure Council channel. The faces of the High Command appeared one by one, their expressions hard as crystal. "Princess," the lead counselor said, "you are in possession of a human survivor." "Yes," Aelira replied. "He was near death. You are ordered to surrender him immediately." Aelira took a slow breath. "He is unarmed, injured, and not hostile." "Humans are hostile by existence," another counselor snapped. "Do you know who you are sheltering?" Aelira hesitated. "I know his name is Elias." The counselor's eyes darkened. His full name. She had not asked. She realized now why. "I will speak to him," she said. "Then I will respond." The council allowed it, but only briefly. Aelira returned to the medical chamber. Elias was awake, staring at the ceiling again as if expecting bad news. They found you, she said. He nodded once. I assumed they would. What is your full name? She asked. He turned his head to look at her. For the first time, his calm expression wavered. Elias Ward. The name struck her like a silent explosion. Ward. Every Virelian child knew that name. It belonged to the human leader blamed for the Empire's greatest humiliation. The one whose actions had forced Virelian worlds to retreat, their pride shattered. The name spoken with anger, with shame. Elira felt her hands tremble. You are his son, she whispered. Yes, Elias said. He did not deny it. He did not defend it. I was afraid you'd recognize it. The room felt suddenly too small. My people lost everything because of him, she said. Entire systems, generations of trust. I know, Elias replied quietly. I've spent my life hearing what he did. Then why serve? She demanded. Why wear that uniform? Because someone had to prove we weren't all the same, he said. Elira turned away, struggling to steady her thoughts. This changed everything. Saving a random human was one thing, saving the son of him was another. They want you surrendered, she said. Immediately. I understand, Elias said. You shouldn't protect me. She faced him again. You accept this too easily. He met her gaze. I've lived with this name my entire life. If my surrender prevents another war, it's a small price. Elira saw then what no story had ever shown her. This human carried guilt that was not his own, and bore it willingly. Outside the chamber, alarms grew louder. Command ships were closing in. The council demanded compliance. Elira stood at the threshold, torn between duty and something deeper. If she surrendered him, she would be praised, trusted, safe. If she didn't, she would be branded a traitor. Behind her, Elias spoke softly. Princess, whatever you decide, thank you for seeing me as a person. She closed her eyes. In that moment, Elira realized the truth was far more dangerous than any weapon, and she had already chosen to hear it. Princess Elira did not return to the council channel right away. She stood alone in the quiet corridor outside the medical chamber, listening to the soft hum of the ship. Every lesson she had ever learned told her what she was supposed to do. Hand over the human, protect the Empire, preserve order. Yet the image of Elias lying helpless in the escape pod refused to leave her mind. Not as an enemy, not as a symbol, as a single life. When she finally returned to the bridge, the High Command was waiting. Their patience was gone. Princess, the lead counselor said sharply, your silence is unacceptable. I was confirming the facts, Elira replied evenly, and another demanded. And yes, she said, he is Elias Ward. A wave of anger rippled through the council. Then you understand the situation, one said. His presence alone is an insult. He is not his father, Elira said. That name carries blood, the counselor snapped. Words, Elira corrected. Stories, not blood. The council erupted, voices overlapping, demanding immediate surrender. Elira let them speak. When they finally quieted, she did something none of them expected. I invoke the ancient custodian right, she said. Silence fell. That law was old, older than most of their ships. It allowed a royal to grant temporary protection to a foreign being if their life was in danger and their intent was unknown. It had never been used in modern times. You would protect him, the lead counselor asked in disbelief. I will bring him before a tribunal, Elira said. Open, transparent, without punishment before truth. You risk war, another warned. Elira lifted her chin. Then we should ask why truth frightens us more than weapons. The channel cut. Across the ship, tension grew. Command vessels surrounded them, not firing but watching. Waiting, the kind of waiting that crushed weaker minds. Elias sensed the change even before Elira returned. He sat upright now, medical restraints removed, his strength slowly returning. You didn't surrender me, he said quietly. No, Elira replied. You shouldn't do this for me, he said. Your people will hear the truth, she interrupted, and so will you. The tribunal chamber was vast, designed to impress and intimidate. Crystal walls reflected light like frozen fire. Elders, officials, and observers filled the seats. Elias stood alone at the center, wearing a simple uniform without rank markings. He had requested it. Elira sat beside the council, not above them. That, too, was a message. The lead counselor spoke first. Elias Ward. Son of the architect of our humiliation, why are you here? Elias did not bow, he did not posture. I was rescued, he said, against your expectations. You expect us to believe this was coincidence? The counselor pressed. Yes, Elias said. Because if I planned this, I would have brought weapons or threats. I brought neither. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Your father destroyed trust between our peoples, another counselor said. Do you deny this? No, Elias replied. That answer surprised them. He made choices, Elias continued, that history recorded as cruelty, but history never recorded why. Elira felt the room lean forward. Elias raised his wrist and activated a small data unit. These are unedited records, human and non-human. Declassified only after my father's death. The council hesitated, then allowed it. Images filled the chamber, not battles, not destruction, evacuation routes, overcrowded stations, worlds on the edge of collapse. My father was given an impossible choice, Elias said. Allow a chain war that would have consumed half the galaxy or force one empire to retreat and take the blame. Lies, someone shouted. Then explain why humanity never expanded afterward, Elias replied calmly. Why we withdrew, why we accepted sanctions. Why we let ourselves be named monsters. The images continued. Human fleets turning away from unprotected systems, supplies diverted, borders closed. We became the enemy, Elias said, so others wouldn't have to be. The chamber was silent now. My father died hated, Elias continued. He never defended himself, neither did we, because if the truth came out too soon, the fragile peace would have broken. Elira watched the faces around her change. Confusion, doubt, something like shame. Why reveal this now? The lead counselor asked. Elias looked at Elira, then back at the council. Because your princess saw me as a person, and because I'm tired of running from a name. The council recessed. Time stretched. Outside the chamber, ships remained locked in place, still no weapons fired. The galaxy itself seemed to be holding its breath. When the council returned, their decision was careful, fragile. You will be released, the lead counselor said, not as a friend, but not as a prisoner. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. However, the counselor continued, this information will be reviewed, verified. That is all I ask, Elias said. Elira stood. Then this tribunal has served its purpose. Later, in the quiet of the observation deck, Elias prepared to leave. A human transport waited beyond the viewing glass. You should go, he said gently, before they change their minds. I know, Elira replied. They stood in silence, watching the stars. You saved me, Elias said. You saved my understanding, Elira answered. He hesitated, then smiled faintly. If the galaxy ever asks who humans really are, remember this. I will, she said. As his ship departed, Elira felt something shift, not just within herself, but across unseen lines of belief. Reports began to spread. Other species requested access to the records. Questions followed. Old accusations weakened under scrutiny. There was no war. There was something far more dangerous, truth, and humanity once again stood at the center, not as conquerors, but as the ones who had quietly held the weight of the galaxy so others could stand. Elira watched the stars and understood at last. Humans were never the enemy. They were the shield. Months passed after Elia's ward left Virely in space, but the silence he left behind was louder than any alarm. Princess Elira often stood on the same observation deck where she had last watched his ship disappear into the stars. The galaxy looked the same, yet nothing truly was. Information moved slowly at first. The records Elias had shared were reviewed, questioned, and challenged. Councils argued. Historians fought over old meanings. Some leaders tried to bury the data again, afraid of what it might change. But truth, once seen, was difficult to hide. Other species began to ask uncomfortable questions. Why had humanity accepted isolation without protest? Why had they never demanded apology or reward? Why had they chosen silence when anger would have been easier? Elira was summoned often, not as a princess this time, but as a witness. You protected the human, one foreign delegate said during a closed meeting. Why? Because he did not ask to be protected, Elira answered. He only asked to be understood. That answer spread farther than she expected. Across the galaxy, human diplomats were suddenly invited to rooms they had not entered in generations. Not welcomed, not trusted, but listened to. That alone was change. On Earth, Elias returned quietly. There were no parades, no announcements. Humanity had learned long ago that attention was not always safety. He resumed his work with evacuation fleets, the same work he had always done, yet people noticed. Young officers asked to serve under him. Civilians sent messages, not of praise, but of relief. They were tired of being hated for reasons they had never fully understood. One evening, Elias stood before a group of recruits. He did not speak of glory or revenge. We help, he said simply. That's what we do, even when no one thanks us. Why? One asked. Elias thought of Elira, of the tribunal, of centuries of silence. Because someone has to, he replied. Back in Virelian space, the Empire was changing in quieter ways. Texts were rewritten. Children were taught new versions of old history, not kinder but fuller. Not heroes and villains, but choices and consequences. Some resisted. Hatred does not fade easily. A radical faction rose within the Empire, angry at what they called weakness. They did not attack, they protested, they disrupted councils, they spread fear through words instead of weapons, they demanded a show of strength. Elira was warned. They will push for confrontation, her advisor said. If not now, then soon. With humans? Elira asked. Yes. Elira closed her eyes. She requested a private channel to Earth. It took time. Human bureaucracy moved carefully when fear was involved. But eventually the screen activated. Elias appeared, older somehow, though only months had passed. You're calling from Viral, he said softly. Yes, Elira replied. There are those who want to test us to see if humanity is still the enemy they remember. Elias nodded. I expected this. They may provoke you, she said. Not with force, with accusations, traps. Elias smiled faintly. We're used to that. What will you do? She asked. What we always do, he said. Nothing reckless. The next assembly was the largest in decades. Species that had once refused to sit near humans now shared the same chamber. Tension filled the air like static. The radical Virelian speaker took the floor. Humans claim sacrifice, he said loudly. Yet they grow stronger in silence. How do we know this is not deception? All eyes turned to the human delegation. Elias stood not as a commander, but as a citizen. You don't, he said calmly. Murmurs spread. You don't know our intent, Elias continued. And you shouldn't trust it blindly. The radical smiled. Then you admit we should fear you. No, Elias replied. I admit fear is natural. What matters is what you do with it. He gestured to the chamber. We could have spoken centuries ago. We didn't, not because we couldn't, because we chose peace over pride. The radical scoffed. And now, Elias said, we are still choosing. The chamber fell silent. Elira watched faces soften, not all, but enough. The vote that followed was narrow, painfully narrow. Humanity was formally removed from the hostile classification, not trusted, not forgiven, but no longer the enemy. Outside the chamber, Elira met Elias once more, not as rescuer and rescued, but as equals. You did not defend yourself, she said. I defended the choice, Elias replied. She studied him. You carry a heavy burden. So do you, he said. You changed your people. Not alone, she answered. They stood together, watching ships depart peacefully. In the years that followed, the galaxy adjusted. Slowly, carefully, humanity remained the quiet force it had always been, building, helping, taking blame when needed. Other species began to understand something important. Strength was not always loud. Power was not always visible, and the greatest shields did not shine until something struck them. Princess Elira recorded one final entry in her personal archive. History taught us to fear humans, she wrote. Truth taught us they were carrying our fear for us. Far away, on a small human vessel escorting refugees to safety, Elias looked out at the stars and felt for the first time that the weight was lighter. Humanity had never demanded thanks. But at last, the galaxy had learned why. The galaxy did not change in a single moment. It changed in small, careful steps, like someone learning to walk again after a long injury. After the assembly removed humanity from the hostile list, there was relief, but also uncertainty. Old habits were hard to break. Old fears stayed quiet, waiting. Princess Elira understood this better than most. She spent long hours meeting with ambassadors, historians, and teachers. Many wanted guidance. Others wanted reassurance. A few wanted permission to be angry. She gave them none of that. She spoke only of responsibility. If truth has come to us, she told one council, then we must decide what kind of people we are now that we know it. Some listened. Some did not. But the questions had begun, and questions were powerful. Far from Virelian space, Elias Ward continued his work. His evacuation fleet moved along the edges of unstable regions, where failing stars, collapsing habitats, or simple neglect put lives at risk. Humans were still not fully welcomed, but they were no longer chased away. That alone saved thousands. Elias never mentioned the assemblies or the votes. To his crew, he was the same as always. Calm, fair, quiet. He ate with them, listened to their worries, and took the worst shifts when systems failed. One young pilot finally asked what many were thinking. "Commander," she said, "after everything, don't you ever want recognition?" Elias smiled slightly. "Recognition doesn't move ships," he replied. "People do." The fleet received a message one cycle later, a joint rescue request, Virelian and 2 other species, a shared mission. The crew froze as the message appeared. "Is this a test?" someone whispered. "Maybe," Elias said, "or maybe it's trust learning to breathe." They accepted. When the fleets met, there was no celebration, no speeches, just quiet coordination, shared maps, shared tasks. Different species working side by side without trying to prove anything. It felt strange. It felt right. News of the mission spread, slowly at first, then faster. Stories replaced rumors. Children on distant worlds began asking new questions. Why do humans help even when it's not their problem? Teachers struggled to answer. On Viral, Elira walked through a public learning hall, listening as young students discussed the old war. One child raised a hand. "If humans were not evil," the child asked, "why did they let us believe they were?" The teacher hesitated. Elira stepped forward. "Because sometimes," she said gently, "protecting others means letting them hate you." The child thought about that. "That sounds lonely." "Yes," Elira said, "it is." That night, Elira sent a personal message to Elias, not official, not diplomatic. "Are you lonely?" she asked. The reply came much later. "Less than before," Elias wrote. "Some weights are lighter when shared." The radical faction did not disappear. Fear rarely did, but without an enemy to point to, their voices weakened. They argued among themselves, they accused each other. Their movement faded into noise. What remained was something fragile and new, cautious cooperation. Years passed, joint academies formed. Not to blend cultures, but to understand them. Human instructors taught crisis response. Virelians taught long-term planning. Others brought perspectives shaped by lifespans longer or shorter than either. Arguments still happened. Mistakes were made. But they were discussed, not hidden. Elira aged, slowly by human standards, quickly by some others. Her role changed from decision-maker to guide. She trained successors, not in authority, but in listening. On her final official visit beyond Virelian space, she requested one stop. Elias met her on a modest station overlooking a quiet star. "No guards, no ceremony. You chose a strange place," he said. "I wanted somewhere honest," Elira replied. They walked together, watching ships move like small lights in the dark. "The galaxy still doesn't love humans," Elira said. Elias nodded. "We never needed love. But it respects you now," she continued. "That matters." "It does," he agreed. Elira stopped. "Do you regret anything?" Elias considered the question for a long time. "I regret that it took suffering to teach restraint," he said. "But I don't regret the choice," she smiled. "Then history will remember you kindly." "History remembers what it wants," Elias said. "We just do the work." They parted soon after. No promises, no dramatic farewells, just understanding. In the decades that followed, humanity's role became clear. Not leaders, not rulers, not heroes, stabilizers. Where systems failed, humans arrived. Where negotiations stalled, humans waited. Where blame was needed to prevent chaos, humans stepped forward. Other species began to copy that behavior, slowly, imperfectly. The galaxy grew quieter. On a distant world, a monument was raised, not to a battle, not to a leader. Just a simple inscription written in many languages. To those who carried what others could not. No names were listed. On Earth, Elias retired, not with honors but with peace. He lived near the sea, watching tides move in and out, steady and patient. One day, a message arrived. From Viral, Elira had passed. Elias stood for a long time looking at the stars that night. She had changed her people. She had changed him too. The galaxy moved on as it always did. New challenges, new fears, new mistakes. But one truth remained, quietly accepted. Humanity had never been the enemy. They had been the ones standing between fear and destruction, absorbing the weight, so others could learn to choose better. And they would keep doing it, not because they were asked, but because they could.